Hey everybody, it's Rick, and I wanted to thank you for joining me on the launch of INWYT Walkabout, the channel where we're gonna take some time, go on a walk together, and try to understand and get to the bottom of the nature of the complex problems that always seem to show up in our daily lives. Whether it's at the workplace or on the home front, basically anywhere we go. I've been in healthcare for most of my career, both clinically as well as a quality, safety, performance improvement expert, working on improving the way we deliver care to patients and support families, and also enable care teams to be as successful as they can be. And one of the things that I have observed over the years of doing this is that regardless of how successful we are in moving teams forward, building teams, and advancing to a point where we understand the problem and we have a solution to put in place that pretty much everyone conceptually agrees on, at the end of the day, there's always a point of resistance where people go, yeah, I'll do this, but I won't do that, or really can't do this, and so I'm just not going to do it. And really what it boils down to, as I've kind of looked at it, is it's always conflict. And I think one of the things that has caught my attention and interest as a result of that is I've started to be much more aware of how problems in general, whether it's in the media or when we're talking to each other just informally, always have an element of conflict wrapped up in sort of the problem that we're talking about. And so so I started to kind of ask myself, is a problem always a conflict? Why do we always have conflict when we know what we should be doing? We have a treatment for a patient, and maybe the patient doesn't want to do it for any number of reasons. They're not right or wrong, or the patient has an idea of what they think is wrong with them, and the care provider isn't willing to listen to them for whatever reason, thinks it's something else, and all of a sudden you have a clash there. So I guess what I've started to look at is and started to appreciate is there really are maybe some phases of trying to understand this. One of which is actually to just start to look at what's actually going on around us in our everyday lives when we have these conversations, and really to appreciate and have some awareness of how common it is, and how we essentially don't necessarily see it anymore because it's just what it is. It just is in our surrounding and we accept it. And then the next piece that, again, I think follows from that is really taking the time to actually say what's beneath this, like rather than look at a particular problem or a particular conflict, really the question is how do we understand it? How do we look at conflict more broadly at its root and say, is there something that's common to all conflict? Do we keep trying to knock off conflict one by one, or is there something where if we really understood it, we would have a different approach and a different way of looking at this? Which leads to that last piece, which is again this principle, in fact, that when you understand something comprehensively, most of the time there's action that comes out of it. You just understand and see what's going on, and naturally you don't go chasing ideas. You say, well, we need to do this, and then we have to figure out how to do it. So what I would like to do in this on this channel is really to, again, explore this together, not to have a structured way of saying I'm going to try to point things out to you from my point of view, but rather to ask questions together around these challenging topics and to see whether we can, in these sort of 5 to 10 minute sessions, actually learn together without script, just kind of, grappling with these concepts and observations, and maybe collectively or collaboratively come to a better understanding of what's going on. And, through that, then maybe we have a different way of looking at our lives in general and a different way of approaching these types of problems. One of the things, again, that I've come to appreciate much more is that when there's understanding, it's not about really saying, how do I do something? It's really about doing something without effort. So it's not action. It's not like, somebody has told me, or, I'm overweight, so I need to go on a diet and I need to do these things. There's an understanding of just eating correctly, if you will. It doesn't require effort. So as we go along here, this is not scripted, and I think one of the things that I always like is stories, because I think stories are always great ways of showing issues, things that we want to talk about, and they always touch everybody because everybody has a story and a connection. So I'm gonna, every time we have one of these walks, try to share a story, and then collectively with you try to say, all right, what's going on here? What can we look at that's of interest? Again, particularly related to just how we observe our surroundings, how we interpret what we're doing, and then see what shows up. So there's no expected outcome here. I'm learning with you. We're learning together, and there may be some awkward pauses. The technology may or may not be perfect, and sometimes we may just take a pause and enjoy the scenery, like my walk here in my neighborhood, which is quite nice in the morning. I'll just flip and show you kind of the walk along the way here. It's very peaceful, very quiet. You can hear a lot of just natural sounds. And, maybe we'll just take a pause so that we can reflect a little bit and then continue with our conversation. So I look forward to this. I'm excited to explore this. I think there are lots of ways to share information. I've written a book. It's Not What You're Thinking. INWYT is the acronym for that. And the walkabout, the INWYT walkabout, is really about saying let's explore how we see things on walks, as I said, and see what happens. So I look forward to seeing you all on the next episode. Again, this is Rick, and this is INWYT Walkabout, and I'll see you next time. Take care.